Cyrus the Great. The true story of Cyrus, from shepherd's son to king of kings. What do a paranoid dream, a baby marked for murder, a feast that ends in cannibalism, and a river sabotage during a music festival have in common? One man, Cyrus the Great. Step into the true story behind the legend. Before empires bowed, before Babylon cheered, and before thousands returned home from exile, Cyrus was just a child his grandfather tried to kill. Why did a king fear a baby so deeply? How did a shepherd's lie rewrite history? And who convinced Cyrus to ride camels into battle against cavalry? This isn't just a tale of conquest, it's a cinematic chain reaction fueled by divine prophecy, palace betrayal, drunken guards, and a queen who bathed a king's head in blood. From the Dreams of Astyages to the fall of Babylon, from Dastardly Dinners to Camels versus Cavalry, we ask, what made Persia different from every empire before it? Why did Cyrus spare his enemies, yet outmaneuver kings twice his power? Who was Cassandana, the love who anchored his crown, and Croesus, the king who helped him fall? How did a festival in Babylon become the quiet prelude to invasion? And what really happened the day Cyrus met Queen Tomyris? This is not a documentary, it's a historical thriller, and when it's over, you won't just know who Cyrus was, you'll know why empires kneel at his legacy. Gather round the marble fireplace of antiquity, my friend, and brace yourself for a tale soaked in prophecy, paranoia, betrayal, and a feast so twisted even the gods probably did a double-take. Let's unravel the intoxicating origins of the man who rose from shepherd's quarters to claim history's loftiest throne, Cyrus the Great, the first king of kings of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. In 612 BCE, the mighty Neo-Assyrian Empire, once the iron-fisted overlord of Mesopotamia, crumbled under the combined assault of Babylonian and Median forces at the Battle of Nineveh. Its collapse left a power vacuum, and four great kingdoms rose to dominate the region. Capital Memphis, later Thebes. Territory, Nile Valley, parts of Nubia, and influence over the Levant. Strengths, ancient prestige, wealth from the Nile, and a powerful priesthood. Weaknesses, fragmented leadership and internal strife. Role, Egypt tried to reassert dominance in the Levant but was increasingly isolated. Capital, Sardis. Territory, western Anatolia, including Cappadocia. Strengths, rich in gold, from the Pactolus River, first to mint coins. King Croesus, famous for his wealth and tragic downfall. Role, a bridge between East and West, Lydia was a cultural and economic powerhouse. Capital, Babylon. Territory, Mesopotamia, parts of Syria and Palestine. Strengths, intellectual center, home of astronomy and law. King Nabonidus, last ruler before Persian conquest. Role, Babylon was the spiritual heir of Mesopotamian civilization. Capital, Ecbatana. Territory, northwestern Iran, stretching east to the Zagros and west to Cappadocia. Strengths, fierce warriors, tribal unity, alliance with Babylonians. King Astyages, last Median ruler whose paranoia would shape history. Role, the Medes were the rising star until they were eclipsed by their own kin. Nestled in the rugged mountains of Persis, modern Fars, the kingdom of Anshan was a subordinate vassal to the Mede Six. Its rulers belonged to the Achaemenid clan, a noble Persian lineage claiming descent from a semi-mythical founder named Achaemenes. Founder, Achaemenes. Old Persian, Haxamanish. Dynastic line, Teispes, Cyrus I, Cambyses I, Cyrus II, the Great. Title, King of Anshan, a modest title that would soon shake the world. Legacy, they would build the largest empire the world had ever seen. King Astyages of Media was troubled. His daughter Mandana was pregnant, and he had a dream. She exuded water that flooded all of Asia. The interpretation? Her child would overthrow him and rule the known world. To thwart fate, Astyages married Mandana off to Cambyses I, a minor king of Anshan. Surely, no son of a lowly Persian could threaten the mighty Median throne, but fate is stubborn. Soon after, Astyages had another dream. Vines grew from Mandana's womb, wrapping around the world. The message was clear. This child was destined for greatness. In 600 BCE, Mandana gave birth to a boy in the royal palace of Ecbatana. He was named Kurosh in Old Persian, Cyrus to us. Astyages, gripped by fear, ordered his trusted general Harpagus to kill the infant and dispose of the body far from court. Harpagus, torn between duty and conscience, couldn't bring himself to murder the child. Instead, he handed the baby to a shepherd named Mithridates, instructing him to do the deed. But Mithridates and his wife, moved by compassion, raised Cyrus as their own, hiding his royal identity. Harpagus believed the child was dead. So did Astyages. Years passed. Cyrus, now known as Agradates, grew into a bold and charismatic boy. One day, while playing king and court with other children, he whipped the son of a Median noble who refused to obey his royal commands in the game. The noble's father, outraged, reported the incident to Astyages. When Cyrus was summoned, Astyages recognized something uncanny: the boy's bearing, his eyes, his spirit. He was no shepherd's son. Astyages confronted Harpagus, who confessed the truth. The king feigned forgiveness and invited Harpagus to a grand feast to celebrate the boy's survival. Harpagus sent his 13-year-old son to the palace, unaware of the horror to come. At the feast, Astyages served Harpagus a special dish. After the meal, he revealed the truth. Harpagus had just eaten his own son, butchered and cooked by royal chefs. Harpagus, stunned, replied, "Whatever you do, sire, is agreeable to me." But he never forgot that moment of cruelty would fuel his revenge and help Cyrus rise. After Astyages' attempt to erase his grandson from history failed spectacularly, the old king faced a quandary. The boy was alive, charismatic, and unnervingly competent. Rather than start another round of baby roulette, Astyages gave Cyrus a prestigious role: royal cupbearer. This wasn't just a glorified bartender gig. The cupbearer had access to the king's inner sanctum. He controlled the flow of drinks and whispers. Trustworthy and close to the throne, this role often led to higher court appointments. Cyrus had not only infiltrated the system, he was becoming indispensable. Cupbearing led to royal envoy duties. Cyrus traveled, negotiated, observed. He absorbed politics like a sponge dipped in ambition. His insights and calm demeanor made him a valued advisor, often consulted on foreign affairs and internal strategy. Astyages, still reeling from dreams and doubts, leaned increasingly on this young Persian noble, unaware he was grooming his own overthrower. And then, between diplomatic missions and council debates, Cyrus fell deeply in love. His bride, Cassandana, a fellow Achaemenid, noble in lineage, brilliant in wit, and wholly unmatched. Their union was more than romance. It was dynastic fusion, a merger of bloodlines that strengthened Cyrus's claim to leadership. He didn't just marry a queen, he married his anchor, his equal, and the woman who would bear the heirs of empire. It was a royal love story, written not in gold, but in fire. While Cyrus was busy building trust, Harpagus, the courtier forced to dine on his own son, was working a different angle. He gathered nobles disillusioned with Astyages, whispering, "The king feasts on fear, Cyrus offers freedom." Harpagus found in Cyrus not just a survivor, but a savior. Friendship blossomed, strategy brewed. Now in his 40s, Cyrus made his move. He returned to Persia, not with gifts, but with fire. He raised his homeland in revolt, rallying Persians tired of Median rule and inspired by a leader who had once dodged death as a baby. Cyrus's forces, though initially modest, carried something stronger than numbers: purpose. He won a first battle within Persia, confirming his legitimacy. Another, near the Persia-Media border, further galvanized support. And then came the clash outside Pasargadae. Astyages, aged, arrogant, and unaware he was facing his former protege, deployed his army. But Harpagus betrayed him mid-battle. The tides turned. Cyrus crushed Astyages' forces. He marched into Ecbatana, capital of Media. The walls didn't resist, they welcomed. Almost immediately, governors in Hyrcania, Parthia, and Bactria realized which way the wind was blowing. They submitted not out of fear, but recognition. The Achaemenid Empire was born, not through annihilation, but through collaboration. Persia and Media, once separate and unequal, fused into a powerhouse of culture, administration, and military might. Cyrus didn't erase his enemies, he absorbed them. The great king of kings, Cyrus, was no brute conqueror. He was a maestro of perception. Treaties of friendship were signed with Babylon and Lydia, creating the illusion of peace. But while exchanging diplomatic gifts, Cyrus was building an empire like a spider weaving silk behind a curtain. To manage his growing dominion, overseers, trusted satraps, were sent to supervise lesser rulers and keep them loyal. And most famously, 10,000 elite warriors, the Immortals, spear-wielding masters of war, were instituted. Their number was never allowed to fall below 10,000. If one died, another was immediately appointed. These weren't just troops, they were myth on horseback. Meanwhile, far to the west, King Croesus of Lydia, flushed with gold and glory, turned to the oracle of Delphi for guidance. Her response? If you go to war, you will destroy a great empire. Croesus, drunk on hubris, assumed she meant the Persians. So in 548 BC, acting on intel from spies about Persian military buildup at the Halys River, he launched his campaign. Cyrus sent envoys to the Ionian Greeks pleading neutrality. Only Miletus listened. The others remained loyal to Lydia. Little did they know this choice would echo through history, sparking the fire that would one day become the Greco-Persian Wars from Salamis to Thermopylae. In 547 BC, Croesus crossed the Halys River, the traditional border of Persia, and besieged Pteria, turning its citizens into slaves. Cyrus, seated in his capital of Ecbatana, learned of this transgression and moved swiftly. With him came not just Persians and Medes, but fierce warriors from Hyrcania, Sakai, and beyond. The Achaemenid army arrived to find Pteria burned and Croesus confident. But when the battle was joined, it was epic. Cyrus's center crashed through like a thunderclap. Croesus's army was bloodied, broken. The Lydian king fled eastward to Sardis, dreaming winter would halt further conflict. Croesus, back in Sardis, dismissed his mercenaries and summoned Babylon, Egypt, and Sparta for help in 5 months. But Cyrus didn't wait. He pressed into Lydia, encamping within sight of Sardis. Croesus launched a cavalry force, but Cyrus's general, Harpagus, had an eccentric plan. Use camels instead of horses. Why? Horses aren't used to camel scent, it spooks them. Camels formed the vanguard, driving Lydian horses into chaos. Croesus' forces crumbled again. He retreated behind Sardis' mighty walls. Croesus sent final pleas for help, but it was too late. 14 days, that's all it took. Cyrus encircled Sardis like a storm cloud and struck. One of the richest capitals in the Near East collapsed under lightning warfare. But Cyrus wasn't just a conqueror, he was a chess master of mercy. He spared Croesus, reportedly moved by the aged king's wisdom. Croesus was brought into court, not as a prisoner, but as an advisor. The oracle had spoken true. Croesus did destroy a great empire. Unfortunately, it was his own. Following the fall of Lydia, Cyrus laid plans for a glorious new capital, Pasargadae. Resistance flickered in places like Bactria and Urartu, but his generals fanned out to extinguish rebellion. Cyrus wasn't just expanding an empire, he was shaping civilization. He'd come cloaked in peace, wielding immortals, manipulating rivers and horse-scent psychology, and emerged as the architect of a new world order. Now the stage was set after dazzling the world with Persian brilliance in Lydia. Cyrus's imperial gaze turned toward the glittering ancient monolith of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. But unlike the usual cloak-and-dagger conquests, this one unfolded like an epic drama written by divine appointment, or maybe just exceptionally gifted engineers. By 542 BC, Babylon was not the utopia it had once been under Nebuchadnezzar II. Instead, it was the political equivalent of a malfunctioning palace fountain, elaborate on the outside, broken on the inside. King Nabonidus had gone full solo artist, ignored the priests of Marduk, ditched civic traditions, neglected the sacred New Year's festival, gasp, and went on a retirement sabbatical to Arabian luxury resort town Tama. His son Belshazzar, yes, the party prince of biblical fame, was left behind to babysit Babylon and fumbled the pacifier. Discontent simmered like clay in a kiln. The Babylonian elite, the commoners, and especially the temple administrators were fed up. They didn't need a conqueror, they needed a redeemer. And Cyrus heard their cry. Like a geopolitical influencer, Cyrus didn't send armies first. He sent ideas. Persian agents whispered sweet promises across the Babylonian Empire. Cyrus will restore Marduk's festival. He'll renovate your temples. He's not just a conqueror. He's your guy. The message spread like incense smoke, mysterious, pervasive, and oddly satisfying. By 540 BC, he sent troops to seize Elam, a Babylonian-dominated region, backed by a native revolt. Because Babylon was so unpopular, people were volunteering to be conquered. This slap across Babylon's cheek woke Nabonidus, who dropped his desert vacation like a hot date and rushed back to Babylon, gathering sacred statues from every city like Pokemon relics to secure spiritual compliance. In 539 BC, Cyrus pressed south with thunder in his sandals. His troops, now veterans from Lydia, Media, Elam, and beyond, approached Opus, only to be stalled by nature's belly laugh, a swollen tributary of the Tigris. Did Cyrus turn back? Hardly. He unleashed his engineers to dig channels, divert the waters, and build temporary detours using palm trees and sheer audacity. While Cyrus redirected rivers, Nabonidus's general Gubara assembled an army and prepared to meet this hydrologically gifted enemy. Late September, near Opus, under the Shahbaz standard of gold and crimson, Cyrus' army clashed with Gubara's and utterly crushed it. Opus was plundered. Gubara surrendered and promptly secured himself a job in the Persian hierarchy. You lose a battle, you get promoted. It's the Cyrus way. Nabonidus fled south by boat because nothing says confidence like skipping town on a river cruise. Cyrus now stood before Babylon itself, an ancient leviathan of stone and sacred fire. Picture this. A triangular fortress with double walls, 80 feet tall, stretching 15 miles. The mighty Euphrates River flowing through the city. Moats, grids, citadels. The Ishtar Gate shimmering with blue-glazed bricks. Defenders dug in, thousands, well-fed, well-armed, bracing for a siege that could take months, maybe years. Even Cyrus had to pause and rub his imperial chin. Conquering Babylon by brute force? That was not the Persian style. It was messy, costly, and frankly, beneath Cyrus's refined imperial palate. So he summoned his advisors and hatched a plan of such finesse it deserved its own opera. Split the army. One force camped where the Euphrates entered Babylon from the north, the other where it exited downstream. Classic pincer illusion. Cyrus took the non-combatants, servants, slaves, royal attendants, north to a disused basin that had previously redirected the Euphrates during one of Babylon's civil engineering adventures. He deployed men to dig a new channel from the river to the basin. Palm trees were chopped to act as levees, redirecting water like divine plumbing. And as the last spade of earth was lifted, the Euphrates lowered, the mighty river's flow into Babylon weakened. The mighty Euphrates once flowed deep and proud, so deep, Xenophon noted, that it could swallow 2 men standing upright. But Cyrus the Great, ever the strategist, saw not a barrier but an opportunity. He ordered the river to be diverted into a vast reservoir, a feat of engineering so bold it seemed like sorcery. Herodotus later observed that the once impassable river had been reduced to a mere waist-deep trickle. This was no accident. Cyrus timed the operation to coincide with Babylon's grand festival, a night of music, wine, and wild revelry. The city was drunk on its own magnificence, its guards dulled by celebration. And so, under the cloak of darkness, Cyrus sent his general Gubara and a detachment of elite troops wading silently through the diminished riverbed. They slipped beneath Babylon's towering gates, unnoticed by the revelers above. By dawn, the city's fate was sealed. Prince Belshazzar lay dead. The gates were flung open. Babylon, once the jewel of Mesopotamia, now bowed to the Achaemenid Empire. 2 weeks later, on October 26, 539 BCE, Cyrus entered Babylon not as a conqueror, but as a redeemer. The priests of Marduk, long oppressed under Nabonidus, hailed him as a savior. Taxes were lowered, public works resumed. Idols stolen by Nabonidus were returned to their sanctuaries. And then came the act that would echo through eternity. Cyrus issued a decree allowing the Jews, exiled by Nebuchadnezzar decades earlier, to return to Jerusalem. Not only did he restore their homeland, but he also funded the rebuilding of their temple. For this, the Hebrew Bible names him a Messiah, the only non-Jew ever to receive such a title. But Cyrus's story didn't end in Babylon. In 530 BCE, he turned his gaze eastward toward the steppes of Central Asia. There, the Sabotage, a fierce nomadic tribe, gathered under their warrior queen, Tomyris. She was no ordinary monarch, tall, proud, and battle-hardened. She ruled with the fire of 1,000 suns. Cyrus, perhaps overconfident from his conquests, proposed marriage. Tomyris saw through the ploy and refused. Instead, she offered him a choice: fight on her terms or retreat. Cyrus chose war. He crossed the Oxus River and laid a trap. A third of Tomyris's army, led by her son, was lured into a Persian camp stocked with wine and luxuries. They feasted, drank, and were slaughtered. Her son, captured and humiliated, took his own life. Tomyris was devastated, but grief turned to fury. She vowed to give Cyrus the blood he craved. On December 4th, 530 BCE, the two armies met. Arrows darkened the sky. Bronze clashed with steel. The Sabotage, wielding brutal battle axes and clad in heavy armor, tore through the Persian ranks. Cyrus fell, either on the battlefield or from wounds sustained. Tomyris found his body, severed his head, and plunged it into a wineskin filled with blood. "Drink your fill," she reportedly said, "of the blood you thirsted for." Though Cyrus died far from home, his remains were returned to Pasargadae. His tomb still stands, a silent sentinel to a man who reshaped the ancient world. When Alexander the Great arrived 2 centuries later, he found an inscription: "I am Cyrus, son of Cambyses, who founded the empire of Persia and ruled over Asia.